one of the things I mentioned on Monday. I'm a direct person. I'm very honest. I'm very direct. I do not hide things. I would tell people I don't wear my heart on my sleeve. I wear it all over my whole body. You know what's going on in my mind because I share it. And one of the hardest things for me at ISC every year, especially during the breakouts, I am bombarded with the death by PowerPoint. This was me on Thursday. You didn't realize they took me away in a stretcher, did you? They performed CPR. They brought me back to life. It was okay, but it was very close. I was near death. And there are just a lot of things there's a lot of things we can do wrong that are going to cause death by PowerPoint that we can fix. And that's what I want to focus on today. While you're enjoying your lunch, I'm going to lead in with a little video that hopefully you'll find enjoyable and entertaining.
That there's some things I hate about PowerPoint, and I figure it's kind of my duty to point them out. So here we go. Here's common PowerPoint mistakes. Number one, people tend to put every word they are going to say on their PowerPoint slides. Although this eliminates the need to memorize your talk, ultimately this makes your slides crowded, wordy, and boring. You will lose your audience's attention before you even reach the bottom of your first slide. Please don't do that anymore, please. Number two, most common, many people do not run spell check. Big mistake. Nothing makes you look stupider than spelling errors. If it's got a red line under it, recheck the spelling. And then finally, I hate this. Avoid excessive bullet pointing, only key points. Too many bullet points, and your key messages will not stand out. In fact, the term bullet point comes from people firing guns at annoying presenters. Hence the bullet point. Bad color schemes, not good. Clashing background and font colors can lead to distraction, confusion, headache, nausea, vomiting, and loss of bladder control. I can't stay on that one too long. Here's something I've noticed. The number of PowerPoint slides you have in your talk, the less useful your talk actually is. Unfortunately, my presentation is right there. I've also noticed this. People love to pack data into their presentations. They just shove more and more data thinking it's better, but it's not. The more data you have, the harder it is to read your slide, and the effectiveness plummets. Now you can improve the effectiveness by adding some shading and some 3D effects, and then some second order and third order effects, and then, I know, let's add some labels. That'll help a lot. And that's pretty much every marketing slide I've ever seen right there. Yeah. Then some like VP of marketing standing there going, it's real clear in Q4. What the hell are you talking about? Now, I'm into, in animation, people become animators in PowerPoint. You can have things flying all over the place, and that can be good. If you're a visual learner, that will improve the effectiveness of your performance. But if you're easily distracted, more animations, and people have no idea what you're talking about. They're just, wow, that is cool, wow. And there's regions here, by the way. There's the simple but effective region. There's the active but confusing, the effective but boring, the active but ineffective, the dull but static region, the busy but useless, the ADD only region, the useful but amusing, the stupid but confusing, the dull triangle, the hyper triangle, the sleepy square, the dizzying pentagon, and everything else I just call pointless motion. That slide right there took me an hour and a half to make, right there. PowerPoint can just suck the life out of you. It's amazing.
The one thing I will attest to that what he said is absolutely true. I have spent sometimes a day and a half on one slide. And I'll show you one on Monday specifically that I did spend about that much time on. I get a little sucked in myself, for sure. Now, everything he just shared in a comedic way, I agree with wholeheartedly. everything he shared. One of the things he talked about was the number of slides in your presentation and the effectiveness of your presentation plummets. As I said, when I was helping with ISC and I saw somebody come in with 90 slides in their slide deck, I just all but fell over. Now, there is some guidelines you can follow for giving presentations. They're a little bit different from delivering training presentations versus like a customer kind of a presentation. But there's some guidelines you can follow on approximately how long you might want to anticipate spending on each slide of your content. Not your title slide, not your agenda slide, not your transition slides, but the actual content slides of your presentation. Anybody have their thought or their guess of what kind of average you might want to anticipate spending on each slide? I'm sorry?
1 minute.
Did you say
1 minute?
1 minute. That's really fast, considering when you think about how much some people have on their slides.
You're talking about when you're presenting or creating?
When you're presenting. When you're presenting.
3 minutes. Full.
I think around 3 to 4, or 2 to 3, 3 to 4, or 2, maybe somewhere between 2 and 4, but I think 3 to 4 is a really good gauge. They say 5 minutes for training slides. You want to assume you're going to spend approximately 5 minutes for each slide, but 3 to 4 minutes, we'll say, for our technical presentations that you're going to be giving to customers. So if I've got an hour with my customer, I don't want to spend the whole hour on PowerPoint. They're not there to see PowerPoint. Maybe a half an hour at most on my slides. How many slides should I have in my slide deck?
10.
Maybe around 10 slides. And if I come in there with 30 slides, I'm going to have to whiz through those slides very fast, and I'm probably going to spend the whole hour on slides. And now I'm going to bore my audience, which we talked about on Tuesday. They're going to check out. That gets very boring. Some of the other things that he did not touch on, but these are my pet peeves that I want to have you avoid, is this kind of a slide inside of your presentation when you're presenting. Whenever I see these kind of slides being used, especially in a large room, a lot of times you'll hear a presenter say this. Now, I know you can't read all of this, but, and I'm in the audience going, well, then why are you showing this? If I can't read it, why are you showing this? This is too much content for a presentation slide. I cannot read all of this. This is great for a handout. Fantastic for a handout. This is not good for a training slide. This is going to bore your audience. They're going to check out. That is, you see that all the time on our slides. Not that specific slide, but slides like that. Some other issues that I see, other common mistakes. So I'm going to ask if you guys can guess. There's a lot of problems with this slide. I'm the first to admit it. But I'm looking for one specific issue. So what issues do you see with this slide? See if somebody can pick the one that I'm looking for.
Why is everything to the side?
Well, I mean, it's margin on it, margin.
Color contrast?
Say, I'm sorry?
Spacing.
Oh, I thought I heard, spacing is a little off, yeah. I think I heard somebody over here say that. Too many points. Or, we'll say too many topics. Some people say, well, there is no topic. I say, sure there is. There are 3 topics. But there's just too many topics. We want to make sure that every slide has a topic, a key topic in mind, a purpose for that slide. Does that mean I need to have a topic at the title of every slide? I say no. I don't think you need a topic, as long as you know what that topic is, what the purpose for that slide is. Now, of course, these bullets, you're going to probably not be surprised that I'm not a big fan of those. We'll talk about those in a moment. What's the problem with this slide?
Too wordy.
I'm sorry?
Too wordy.
Too wordy. Too many words. Too many words. When it says cloud computing up there, why do I need to start with cloud computing? When I'm presenting, and this is in my slide, As a presenter, what's my tendency going to be?
Elaborate.
Did you say elaborate? God, I hope, but I doubt.
Read it.
I'm going to be reading this. I'm going to say, hey everybody, cloud computing offers your IT administrators another tool to deliver applications to your customers. And I'm in the audience going, you know what, I can read too. Why don't you just shut up and let me read the slide, if that's all you're going to do, is read it for me. We don't want to be reading slides. We saw that was one of the top 10 turnoffs. So when I put full sentences here, just like on your index card, it's going to be my gut feelings to read it. What we want to do, if you're going to be using these, is you want to do some limiting of bullets. Now, I like the 5, 5, and 5 rule. No more than average of 5 words per bullet. Average of 5 words per bullet. No more than 5 bullets per slide. And by far, no more than 5 bulletless slides in your presentation. I'd like you to narrow that down to like 1, 2. Bulletless slides are lazy. We create them because they're easy to create, but they're not engaging for the audience at all. So I want to turn this into something like that. These are not complete sentences, so they should not have periods at the end of them. Otherwise, they're complete sentences. Now, there's a variety of other things that I really want to encourage you to do. Really encourage you. One is our titles. If you're going to use the titles, I recommend you use title case for your slide titles, where every letter of every word, the first letter of every word is capitalized, except for words like and the. But your bullets should be in sentence case, so they look like a sentence without a period. That doesn't mean I want sentences. I don't want sentences. I don't want periods. Sentence case means we only capitalize the first letter. The rest, we don't. That's my recommendation. Another recommendation is this. This I see all the time. I see it all the time, including some of my peers on my team, where we capitalize strange words that are not proper words. We have not developed a product called users, or monitors, or pools. Monitors is not a proper word. Somebody in our country who's known for tweeting does this same thing. Capitalizes a lot of words. Now, when I see that as an audience member, I either think the user thinks that's a proper word, in which case they must not be very intelligent, or they're just lazy. I don't know what I think. I think they're unintelligent. Why are you capitalizing? Why do we see this? Why do we see this strange capitalization of non-proper words? Why do people do that?
Trying to highlight it.
They're trying to highlight it. They're trying to emphasize it. But I think that's probably usually the case. Well, there are other ways to emphasize words. Make them bold. Make them italics. At a minimum, make them all caps. If it's all caps, I get what you're trying to do. When you do it like that, I think, doesn't quite understand the English language. So don't capitalize non-proper words. Also, I don't know if Brett mentioned this yesterday. On the whiteboard, I think when you're whiteboarding, it is absolutely appropriate to abbreviate. We don't want to waste time spelling out long words like compression. But I don't think we need to over-abbreviate in our slides. I just don't think it looks great. That's, again, these are my opinions, my recommendations for you. Not over-abbreviate. However, if you don't want to do all the things I'm sharing with you here, at a minimum, at least be consistent on your own slides, from one slide to the next. Quite often I'll see somebody where the first slide is in title case, and then the next slide is not in title case, and the next slide is in title case again. And to me, that looks unprofessional. Here I've got a bunch of bullets, but wait, why? This is still capitalized. And that has a period at the end of it, but that doesn't have a period at the end of it. To me, this looks incredibly unprofessional. And I'm going to judge that person who's delivering these slides as somebody who clearly doesn't have English skills or language skills whatsoever. So if you're not going to take my advice, just be consistent with yourself at least. Whatever do you decide? Follow it on every single slide you do. Also, if you're going to use bullet lists, I don't want you to. I really don't want you to. I want you to find a way to illustrate this in another way, to illustrate this in another way, and so forth. But if you're going to use bullet lists, use animations. When I don't, if I come out here and I talk about, hey, the first thing I want to talk about is how we support any device, anytime. Let me tell you about how great this is. Now, when I'm talking about how great this is, what is the audience doing? When I'm talking about the first bullet, what is the audience doing?
Reading the bullets.
They're reading the rest of the bullets. They're ignoring me, and they're reading the rest of the bullets. So by the time I get to talk about how we load quickly, they're like, oh yeah, I've already read all that. I'm ahead of you. I can get on my phone now. And I'll pick up when you go to your next slide. In addition, watch your feet down there. You're wrapped up in the cord. There you go. In addition, here's another problem. So if you're going to use a bullet list slide, one of the benefits of this is it's kind of like your index card from Tuesday. You can actually use this to follow along. But when I've got it like this, when I'm going to go to my next topic, I'm like, so next, gosh, wait, where was I? What was I just talking about? Not quite sure where I am. So when I just do some simple animations, now when I'm talking, they've got nothing else to look at except for me. And when I'm ready to move on, if I can't remember quite what's next, I just take a look. Oh, we load quickly and perform flawlessly. And it makes it a lot easier for me as a presenter as well. But I still want to encourage you away from those as much as possible. Now, I love these slides as well. This is kind of like the first slide I showed you a little bit ago. And when a presenter presents a slide like this, it always starts like this. In the simplified network diagram, but even worse, when they start presenting this slide, it'll be similar to this. They'll say, okay, so in our tier 1, this is where we apply all of our network level security, and our tier 2 is where we do our layer 7 security, which helps keep our good users in and our bad users out, and we can do this with F5 with our great software bundles of good, better, and best. And I'm just assuming that everybody knows exactly what to look at as I'm talking. But more often than not, they have no idea what I'm talking about, which causes them to check out. It's too much for them to look at. So when you're going to use kind of what I call these crazy slides that are hard for your audience, help your audience out by drawing attention to what it is you're speaking about, such as in our tier 2, this is where we have our layer 2 and 3 security, or 4 security, and in our tier, that was our tier 1, in our tier 2, this is where we have our layer 7 security. This lets us make sure the good users come in, keeps the bad users out, and at F5 we can do this with our great software bundles of good, better, and best. It helps keep the audience's eyes directed. Something's happening on the screen, so it's engaging their eyes. But more importantly, it's helping direct them to where I want them to look. And you see I use these on my slides a lot as well, especially configuration utility slides. If I didn't have these, you would have no idea on the configuration utility page what field I was even talking about. I'm going to show you how to do this in just a few minutes. Now, I love the use of images. I absolutely believe the phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I want to replace as many of those bullet lists as I can with images. As much text. I want to eliminate as much text as possible. The more text you can get out of your slides, the better, and replace it with images. For example, I don't want to see on your slides later today, I don't want to see a bullet that says, AFM has nice reports. What kind of image could I use instead of that bullet? image could I use to illustrate that instead of using a text bullet?
Use a picture of this.
How about a picture of a report? That kind of stuff is so much more engaging for an audience. Now, when I say dramatic image, I don't necessarily mean this. Would you rather be this guy, or would you rather be this guy? That's a good grab opening. Starting off with a good grab. First, though, before I say anything else, did I even need this text?
No.
No. It's exactly what I said. Why am I reading stuff that's on the screen? I didn't even really need the text. When I say dramatic images, what I mean is, would you rather be this guy, or would you rather be this guy? When you have images that fill the whole slide, they fill the room. They get the audience's attention. And you can use images like this for your grab, but you can use it throughout your presentation to make it much more visually interesting for your audience than text. You want to do that as often as possible. Also, the use of a black slide. A black slide just looks like this. Now, let's go back a few slides just so I can illustrate the problem with not using a black slide when I'm on here. So I've just finished this. We've talked about our software bundles of good, better, best. Now, last week I was at this customer site, and we were having a really good meeting talking about this, and I'm noticing a lot of you are still looking back there. Why are you looking back there and not at me? I'm telling an anecdote now. Why are you looking there?
I'm still processing the image, getting everything.
So you're still paying attention to that, and not me. And what's interesting is that even if you're not processing it, people still tend to look at the slide. You know who else tends to look at the slide? The presenter. They're talking about their story about being at the customer site, and a lot of times you'll see them continue to look back. And then I'm thinking to myself, is something supposed to happen on the screen? Like, they look like they're expecting something to happen, and it's very distracting. So the use of a black slide, we go right back there. After I've had that crazy slide, that crazy graphic, then I can talk about, last week I was at this customer site. Oh, we were having this great meeting. Last time you were looking back there, I noticed you, but you're not this time, you're looking at me. That's the benefit of the black slide, is it keeps everyone's attention on me. There's nothing to look at anymore. And a black slide is simply one slide inserted into your presentation, which I'll show you later. That's very easy to do. Some people say, well, can't you use, this little button on the keyboard or on the clicker? There's also a button on the keyboard you can use. And you could do that as well. You can. But the reason I like the black slide is because that's part of my presentation. I know that after that graphic is when I tell my story. So when I come to the black slide in my presentation, even if I forgot that that's the next part of my story, that's going to remind me, this is where I'm telling my story. So that's why I like to put the black slides right in. They're part of my presentation. This works really well. Back here. This works really well if I'm talking, I'm in the middle of that crazy graphic, and somebody says, well, wait, in layer 2, we have this problem in our layer 2, and I can say, it's a really good question. Let me tell you about this story that happened at this last site. It's like an impromptu anecdote. And it's going to get their attention off of there while I tell this. Then when I'm ready to come back, then I'll use the button on this again to pull this back up. So I use this button, or the keyboard button, which is B for black, to do an impromptu black screen. Regardless, though, if you're not going to follow my advice, and you're just going to go ahead and use the corporate marketing slides that are filled with way too much text, way too many things on the slide, literally hardly any white space because there's so much stuff on the slide, please don't be one of those presenters that goes, next slide. I'm sorry about the slide. I know this is not a good slide. I know, but let me explain it to you. Don't apologize for your slides, okay? You got to own your slides. If you're going to use them, own them. They're yours. Be proud of them. If you're not proud of them, then either fix them or don't use them. But don't apologize for them to your audience. That will really irritate a lot of people. So those are some of my tips for how to help make your slides a little bit more vibrant. We're also going to do some a little tutorial here in a minute. But before we get to that, I also want to talk about some aspects on how to deliver slides. Well, once I got my slides good, now how can I be an effective PowerPoint presenter? We've already talked about how to be a good presenter. We got them all on the board. But there's some other aspects of presenting that are specific to slides. In your book, you have 2 pages on PowerPoint tips. Should have told you that before we got started. I apologize. But on the second page is specifically for tips for being a good presenter. I'm going to show you another short video of a PowerPoint presenter. And I want you to just jot down, as you see them, jot down things that you think are good skills. Any kind of good presentation skills. They don't even have to be specific to PowerPoint. Let's just talk about what is it about this presenter that makes them a good presenter, especially about the slides and their presenting of the slides. And then we'll review some of your answers together. All right, it's about 25, 30 seconds long.
And maybe that was true at one time, but it's not anymore. And one of the reasons it's not true anymore is that the most vulnerable part of the Earth's ecological system is the atmosphere. Vulnerable because it's so thin. My friend, the late Carl Sagan, used to say, if you had a big globe with a coat of varnish on it, the thickness of that varnish relative to that globe is pretty much the same as the thickness of the Earth's atmosphere compared to the Earth itself. And it's thin enough that we are capable of changing its composition. That brings up the basic science of global warming, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because you know it well. The sun's radiation comes in the form of light waves, and that heats up the Earth, and then some of the radiation that is absorbed and warms the Earth is re-radiated back into space in the form of infrared radiation. And some of the outgoing infrared radiation is trapped by this layer of atmosphere and held inside the atmosphere. And that's a good thing because it keeps the temperature of the Earth within certain boundaries, keeps it relatively constant and livable. But the problem is this thin layer of atmosphere is being thickened by all of the global warming pollution that's being put up there. And what that does is it thickens this layer of atmosphere. More of the outgoing infrared is trapped.
All right. So what are some of the techniques used by our former Vice President of the U.S. that made them effective as a presenter?
He had a good timing changing his slides.
Good timing changing his slides. So would you say he knew his slides well?
Yeah. Yes.
You say he knew his animations well? That to me is probably my #1 tip for being a good PowerPoint presenter, is you have to know your slides, you have to know your animations. Otherwise you're doing this the whole time. And then this, next, and this, and this. And by the way, 2 things actually. How many of you have one of your own clickers? Raise your hand. Okay, everyone who didn't raise your hand, you need to get your own clicker. If you're ever going to present in front of anybody, you need one of these. Otherwise, you have to be stuck here at your keyboard to advance your slide. And now I can't move around. Now I'm stuck here. I'm breaking all the rules. You can get one of these from any office supply. In fact, I almost recommend you order one or go down to Staples just down the street and get one before next week so you have your own. And then test it. These all behave differently, especially on these darn Macs. The Macs are always a little tricky. I'm not lying. We've seen it over and over again. Another question I have for you about these is, this has another component here. I've got it pulled out. That's what sends the signal. Where is that other component right now? Where's my laptop? Then why am I doing this?
Yeah.
You see that a lot too. People clicking at the screen when the activator is over there. And the other thing about clicking is you don't even, unless you're having problems with your clicker. If you're having problems with your clicker, well then you need to figure out what's wrong with your clicker. But you shouldn't have to do this every time. When I saw somebody doing this once and I gave them the note, because they had the clicker in this hand, and every time they advanced the mouse, they went like this, they went like this, they went like this. And I said, why couldn't you just put the clicker in that hand so you didn't have to do that weird body cross? But in most cases, you don't have to do that. You'll notice when could you tell he was advancing slides? Did he make any kind of obvious thing that, you looking for something? Yeah, did he make some sort of obvious, are you pulling her out?
I am.
She's going to miss all of her PowerPoint skills.
5 minutes.
Are you going to have time to work on your PowerPoint, you think? Or is he taking you to lunch?
5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes is fine.
I will have heard that
All right.
time first.
Thank you, Frank. So, where was I at? You did not notice him clicking, and that is another great PowerPoint technique. When they're talking, and their clicker's on here, but they're talking, and you can't even tell they're clicking, but stuff is going on behind them. And it's timed perfectly with what they're saying. That's impressive PowerPoint skills. And they don't have to look behind them at all. Now and then I'll glance over here to make sure that I'm caught up, that I'm not ahead or behind. That's another tip, by the way. Some of you may have noticed that he turned around sometimes. We talked about not turning around, not facing the screen. I think it's okay to face the screen. I did a little bit earlier when I was talking about the reports. Look at these reports we have. They're so amazing. Look at these reports. And that's what he was doing. He was like, the Earth's atmosphere, all this radiation. He was kind of illustrating what we were looking at. That's very different than next. We're going to be talking about this, where I'm just facing the slide. Now we're all just looking at our slides together. You might as well come over and sit in the audience with us because we can all just view the slides as one. Why do you need to? So keep your laptop somewhere where you can view it here so that if you want to just verify where you're at, you can just glance over there. It's a lot less distracting than turning your whole body around. What else did we have on the other things that good skills? Picture? The what?
Picture.
Big images, as we just talked about earlier. Big dramatic images that really, in his presentation, had a big impact. That proves the point. Anything else that you have?
Color of infrared radiation was red. No, the other ones were yellow.
So, can I summarize that by saying he used effective animations? Use of effective animations where we're not over-animating, we're using the animations to show what we're trying to say, to tell the story. We're not just using them because they're there. Here I'm going to have some flying in like this. Unless you're talking about a tornado, that's probably an unnecessary animation. One of the other things I like that he did, and I do it a lot as well, is when he was using his hand to sort of show what was going on the screen with the thicker layer. One of the things I see a lot when we go into today's presentations is those of you that were really good with movement, you suddenly now become planted here, and you never move. Like the slides suddenly keep you over here. But just because I have slides on the screen does not mean I cannot move. In fact, get into your slides. Go right into them. Go in here and point something out. I do that all the time, you've noticed, when I want to show something. You can still move over to this side. If I know, again, this has to do with knowing your slides. If I know that I'm on some items over here, but my next click, I've got some items over there. For example, the good users and the bad users that we saw on that big slide. I might say, now, this level of security is really good because click, it lets the good users in. Again, that shows that I know my slides and I'm using my body to really illustrate. One of the things I notice a lot when somebody's way too far away, when they're over here and the slides are over there, I don't know what to look at in the audience. Should I look at the presenter or at the slides? But it begins to feel like a tennis match because I'm going back and forth. Slide, presenter, slide, presenter. So if you're over here talking, they don't have to do that. We've got one visual cue. So get right in your slides. One of the things I always remember, this one presenter and his grab, I don't even know if he had planned this or if it was an accident, but his grab involved a moat, with a castle with a moat. And he just had a big image of a castle with a moat, and he started off by standing right here and talking, and it looked like he was standing in front of this castle in real life. It was a really cool image that he had created. A lot of people wonder why I like the black slide versus background versus the white background, and this is exactly why. If I had a white background slide right now, I'd be like this. It's just all this blaring white, and it makes it really distracting. That's why one of the things like black background. So, know your slides. Get your own clicker, but still utilize all your other PowerPoint, your presentation skills. You can still move around. You don't have to be stuck at that slide. And then, when you know your next click is back here, you can move back to show the next slide. The only thing I advise you not to do is be standing in front of your screen while your animations are going on, because then they can't see what's going on behind you. Wait, what's happening? Any other last thoughts about the PowerPoint skills? Anything? I never remember everything that I'm supposed to say, but it's just things that are popping into my head. So we are going to go through a practice, and so we're going to start with, I'm going to show you how to do 4 different animations. I call it beginning, slightly intermediate, a little bit more than intermediate, and then we go on to an advanced animation to give you some ideas for hopefully your slides a little bit later on. The first thing we're going to do is on slide number 4. Slide number 4, my favorite bulletless slide that we have here. So, as I said, we don't want to just use bulletless without some simple animations. I don't want to use bulletless anyway, but we've decided we don't have time to do anything else. So, this is the easy animation. Some of you may already probably know how to do this. The one tip I'm going to give you that we're going to try to follow this through the rest of this is when you're about to animate something, try not to have your mouse clicked inside of it. I'm going to animate this whole text box. So select the whole thing on the boundary here. In this case, it does not matter. In almost all the rest of the cases that we're going to do, it does matter. So it's just a good habit to get into. And then up at the top here, we're going to go to our animations ribbon. And we have a variety of animations we can use. This is where I want to follow the advice of that comedian and not just have things flying in because I can do that. I use the fade animation for things like this. You could also have it come in from the left if you want. That's almost a bit distracting, but it's about as bad as you could get, and it's still okay. The reason I like the fade, a lot of people just use the appear. The fade and the appear are very similar. The appear, they come in like that. And if I blink for 1 second, I actually miss the animation. Whereas fade, it takes a half a second for each item to come in. And you'll notice over here, on the edge of the slide, you now see some numbers. That's the PowerPoint feature that shows you that we have animations in place and the order of your animations. The first, the second, those are your mouse clicks. And that one's done. That's pretty easy. Simple animation. Easy. For moving into slightly intermediate, we're going to go to slide number 6. Now, slide number 6 is kind of tricky because guess what? This is just a bulletless slide. It's just at least a little bit more of a visually entertaining bulletless slide, but I'm sorry, those are 5 bullets. So what I want to do is I want, again, if I don't do any animations, and I just present this slide as is, as soon as I come out and start talking about how simple we are, everybody's reading ahead, just like we would with bullets. So I'm going to start by animating the simple call out here. And this one, it is important that you select the entire rectangle itself, not clicked inside of it somewhere. Otherwise, the animation will come out weird. Now, this is an object that when I animate it, it could have a sense of a direction. For example, I might want it to look like it's coming from the mouth. Another example of an object like this would be an arrow. I want the arrow to come in that looks like it's going in the direction of the arrow. So for those animations, I use the wipe animation here. When you use wipe, you're going to notice that it will immediately wipe from the bottom to the top. We don't want that. That's not the correct direction. So immediately after you've applied the wipe, you can then come over here to the right where you have the effect options. If your effect options doesn't look like that, that means you clicked outside of there accidentally. You can just select the object again. Actually, no. If you did that, I'll have to show you something else in a moment to fix it. But for now, we can change the direction to from right. And once you've done that, I'll now have you apply the same animation to each one of those, and immediately after you apply the animation, change the direction so that they all look like they're coming from the mouth. Go ahead and do that, and then I'll help you out if you have any struggles. I'll catch up with you here. And again, you're going to see the numbers appearing next to each one. Show you what order they're in. And if you want, you can take a look now at how that looks, in slideshow view. Much easier. Again, they can't read it right now. And honestly, this is a little bit better than a bulletless slide. If you're going to use bulletless slides, maybe use something like this instead. It's not as eye-draining and tiring. Now let's say I've decided that I want to kind of change the order of how I'm going to discuss these. After I talk about how simple we are, I then want to talk about how inviting we are. So I want this inviting to become the second animation. So for that, we're going to bring up our animation pane. And everything else we're going to do is going to utilize the animation pane. So you want to get to know that animation pane if you're going to work with PowerPoint a lot. Well, once you pull that up, you're going to see those 5 animations in order. Now it's just like a firewall rule list. I need to reorder my firewall rules. I need to reorder my animations. We're going to use the same tactic. I'm just going to take the 5th animation and drag it up between animations 1 and 2. And I'll now see that it is the second animation. You should have a PowerPoint in your email. Open up your email, and this is the PowerPoint template that we're all using. So that's how we can reorder stuff. Now we're going to move on to slightly more intermediate of an animation. We're going to go to slide number 8. Remember this slide? Our simple network diagram. So what we're going to do is create some rectangles to draw users' attention. So here is the workflow we're going to go through together, just so you know what we're about to do. We're going to create one rectangle. Then we're going to format the rectangle exactly the way I want every rectangle to look. Then we're going to apply the animation that I want all the rectangles to do, and then I'm just going to simply copy that rectangle and paste other versions of it and move them where I want. That's what we're about to do. So to start off with, we'll draw a rectangle. We can do that back over there on the home ribbon. And there's your rectangle tool right there. What I want you to do is just draw a rectangle around tier 1. All the way around tier 1. Don't worry if it's not perfect right now. As long as you have this rectangle on your slide, you're ready to go.
Under shapes.
I'm sorry?
Under shapes.
Yeah. And you'll notice that right now it's a solid red rectangle, but obviously it's not going to accomplish our goal. They can't even see what's behind it. So we're going to make some edits, but hear me say this. In the next couple of seconds, don't deselect that rectangle. Don't deselect it, otherwise it might disappear and you'll never be able to find it again. So we're going to do two things. The first is we're going to change this shape fill, and we're going to give it a no fill. This is where you don't want to deselect it, because if you do, you'll never find it. We're going to change it to no fill. Then we're immediately going to go to the shape outline right below it and give it some sort of a bright, dramatically colored outline that will catch their attention. My advice would be to give it an outline color that's different from anything else on your slide. So I don't want to use a red outline. We've got red lines. I don't want to use a green outline. We've already got green lines. That will become a little bit harder to recognize. Now the default line that we just got there is very thin. It's kind of hard to spot. That the whole point of this is to get their attention. So I'm going to go back to my shape outline, down here to my weight, and I'm going to give it a much thicker weight. I might even go as high as 4.5 points thick. And if you choose to, you can even apply one more formatting under your shape outline and add some dashes, which again I think will help distinguish this as a look at this call out. So now I have my rectangle looking the way I want all of my rectangles to look. Now I just need to apply the animation that I want them all to have. So for that, we'll come back to the animations pane. And now I have another animation that we're going to use. Perfect for this type of an object. It's called the wheel. When you use the wheel, you'll see the effect it has. I think it really draws that attention perfectly. Now, if I'm presenting, as soon as I'm done with this rectangle and I move to the second rectangle of my animation, what do I want to have happen to this rectangle? I want it to go away. So we can actually apply that as well. But for that, we're going to use the animation pane. And this step is different for Windows users than for Mac users, unfortunately. So for Windows users only, for Windows users, I'm going to have you right-click on our animation here in the pane and choose Effect Options. For Mac users, down here, you should see Effect Options. So you're going to select the rectangle and choose Effect Options. And then we should all be presented with this dialog box. And one of the options in this dialog box is, what should I do after I'm done with this animation? Don't dim means leave it on the screen. I'm going to change that from don't dim to hide on the next mouse click. The next mouse click is when I go to my next rectangle. I'm going to hide this one. And I now have my rectangle formatted properly, animated properly. I can now simply select it again, copy it to my clipboard, and then paste 3 more versions of the rectangle, and then just move them where I want. Now the fourth, for me, my last rectangle I pasted is where it's going to go around my bundles. And the one before that is around my users. And the second one is around tier 2. Go ahead and work on that. I'll come around and help you if you need it. If you move something and you move the wrong object like this, whoops, just do an undo. Just don't try to fix it, otherwise you'll have to get yourself in more trouble than it's worth. Now what's great about this is now that I have this rectangle created, I no longer, ever, have to create that rectangle again. I can just copy that and paste it on another slide. I can copy it and paste it on another slide in another slide deck. I can just reuse that over and over again. But here's one thing you're going to notice, is when I'm presenting this, and I've talked about this, so then I've talked about this, so then I talked about this, and then I talked about this, I'm now ready to move on to my next slide. So I'm going to go ahead and click to move on to my next slide, and what just happened? Why am I not on my next slide?
Because we say disappear next click, and then we have to do
So the last one is still disappearing on the next click. I have to click twice to get to the next slide. So there's 2 things you can do about that. One is just to live with it, deal with it. Most audience members won't even notice it. The other, if you want to be a perfectionist like I am, just go back to your last one and go back to don't dim. Go back from hide on next mouse click to don't dim. I do it all the time. Do it on every single slide. It just becomes part of your job. So our last animation that we're going to work on together is our advanced animation. So we talked Monday about using your body language to talk about full proxy, which visually helps. But I see a lot of people in their slides just put text. Client connection comes to big IP. Big IP processes it. Big IP makes another connection. That's still hard to understand what's happening. We got to make it visual. And we can do that with this slide here. So here's what I want to have happen on this slide. This is my goal. When I start, all I want to see on the screen is the client, the big IP, and the server. That's it. On my first click, I want this text to appear and come all the way over here. Move over there like it's being sent to the big IP. On the second click, I want the lock to appear to show that we're decrypting it. And on the third click, I want this text to appear and move down to the server. So for that, we're going to start with the HTTP request. And again, make sure you select the whole box. Don't click inside of it. Now here's what's tricky about this, is in order to do what I just said I want to do, we have to actually apply 2 animations to this object. 2 different animations. The first animation is very easy. It's just the appear animation. So to start with, just add appear. Make sure you've got 1 entry in your animation pane. The second animation is going to be the motion. We call it the motion path. However, I cannot apply the second animation using this same ribbon. If I do, I'm just going to overwrite the first animation I've already added. So this step is also different for Windows users versus Mac users. So for Windows users only, we're going to use the add animation. This is how you add now a second animation to an object and a third animation. Who knows how many animations you want to add. And then you're going to scroll down a bit. You'll see the motion paths and you can just click on lines. That by default will add a motion path that goes straight down for now. And what you want to make sure of is you got 2 entries here. For for Mac users, instead of add animation, you should see a button that says add motion or something like that.
Path animation.
What was it? Path animation. So you'll click on path animation and then again click on lines. And then we should all now have this. Again, make sure you have 2 entries here. If you don't, that means you overwrote your first. So I need to change where this moves to. From straight down, I want this to move over here. Notice how it has this little red dot? The red dot is the key to moving the end of the path. And I say that because notice when you put your mouse over the red dot, it becomes a double arrow. If I move up just a little bit, it's a 4-way arrow. That is not how I want to move this. That'll kind of mess it up a little bit. You want to use the red dot, the red dot, the double arrow, to move that to where you want it to go. Now notice I have 2 items over here, 1 and 2. What that means is this. When I go to do my slideshow now, my first click is that, and my second click is that. I don't want it to be 2 clicks. I want that to happen at one time. So we're going to be able to do that over here in your animation pane. For your second, up at the top, you're going to see the start. What starts this animation? Right now, it starts on a click. You have to click your mouse to make that animation happen. What we're going to do is change that to start this with the previous animation. So as soon as the appear happens, the motion happens. When you're done, you should now see that there's only 1 click to apply both of those together. That's it for the first animation. The second one, the lock, you can either use fade or wipe. It's up to you. If you want to do wipe, I would just wipe it maybe left or right, so it looks like it's unlocking. Or you can just use fade. That's not the big one here. For the third, I'm going to let you work on it on your own. What I want you to do is do the exact same thing we did here. Do that to this. Select it. Add the appear. Add the second motion. Change the end of the motion path. And then turn it to a start with previous. Well, if you work on that, let me know if you need help. All right, so we have appear, line, change the endpoint, and start with previous. Pretty simple, straightforward. I'm just going to show you one thing. If you want to add it, you could. Maybe after I move HTTP, I get rid of HTTPS altogether. I make that go away. That would be a third animation to add to the HTTPS request, which I can do. I already know how to add a second, so I can add a third. Just remember, you have to use the add animation. I'm going to use the disappear. And when do I want it to disappear? I want it to disappear right when HTTP appears, but I don't want it to be a separate click. That would make no sense. I want that to also be start with previous. And that will make it look like this. So as soon as we do the lock, now it'll go away. That's if you want to add that. So we've now gone through 4 animations, easy, intermediate. This is a little bit more advanced. This is about as advanced as probably anybody knows how to do here at F5 other than you guys. So the last couple things we're going to talk about is just how to add a couple of additional slides with some different layout options and a black slide. Now, let's come in here to this first slide. our title slide. Now, when you're creating a PowerPoint slide deck for your presentations today, this should be your first slide, right? This should be your first slide with your slide title and your name, correct? That should be your first slide in your presentation?
No.
I'm sorry?
Not necessary.
No?
Not necessary.
What should be our first slide?
Maybe a picture or
Of what?
it depends on your
Relating to
presentation.
what?
The graph.
We don't start with this just because we're using a slide deck. We still want to start with our grab. I will never forget this guy. I won't go by his name, but in his presentation, it was his final presentation, his grab was about coming home from after boot camp, going back home to, I think it was India, and his kids were going to be all over him for his attention. His wife was going to be all over him for his attention, and his friends were going to be all over him. And yet he was going to have to, divide his time and really. And I don't remember what his presentation was on, but I do remember that grab. But behind him was his title slide while he was sharing that grab. And I was like, what should he have had up on the slide? Better than that. Picture of his family. Think about the lady from ISC who had the picture of her climbing up with her family. That adds so much more impact, so much more connection when they show that. That's what he should have had. Absolutely. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new slide right there above the first slide. And you can just right-click your mouse wherever you want to add a new slide. Here, I'm going to do it before the first one. And a lot of times it'll apply a layout that you don't need to use. You want a different layout. You want a bulletless layout or a blank layout. So to change the layout, we'll come back to the Home tab. Everybody can use this technique, by the way. And you will see on the Home tab, you'll see a layout option. Now, every PowerPoint template is going to have different layouts. You're not always going to see these same layouts. But all I need is like an empty slide. And I think on this layout, we actually have a blank slide. Guess what we just created? A black slide. If I want a black slide in my presentation, I just created one, just like that. But I'm actually not using this as a black slide. This is my grab slide. And for that, so number one, if your grab is personal, use a personal picture. Go on your phone, find a good personal picture. That'll be the perfect, ultimate imagery. But if your grab is about something like going to the beach, let's say, I use Google Images for almost everything that's not about me. I use Google Images almost exclusively. So I'm going to walk you through this if you're not familiar with this. I'm going to pull up Google, go to Images over here. I want to get a really good picture of the beach that I love. So I'm just going to type beach. But I want to show you a couple of things that you really want to identify. All of these images have a resolution. Some are small resolution, some are really large resolution. You can tell by putting your mouse over them. It's going to tell you what the resolution is. And if it's a small resolution, 300 by 600 or something like that, once you stretch it out on your slide, it's not going to look very good. Now we can actually narrow this down very quick and easy under Tools. I always forget where it is. Under Tools, if you click Tools, you'll notice you actually have some ways you could filter this. So I can go to the Size option here, and I can just view large size images. Now everything on here is going to probably be appropriate for stretching out on a slide. If you are going to a public venue, you're going to be presenting in a public forum, some people are really particular. They say, oh, you should make sure that this image is public usage, and you can use usage rights for that.
You have to do this in Germany always. In Germany, you have to do this anyway.
See, in my opinion, if you're just going to go to do a presentation with SEs or something like that, or even a small customer, you're fine using whatever images you want. That's my opinion. But go ahead, and I'm going to pick whatever image I want. You can pick whatever image you want. And then it's just simply right-clicking on the image over here, copying it, and then pasting on our slide. But you don't want any blackness. No black space, so you want to make sure to resize it so it fills your entire screen so that we have this. That's a dramatic image when I'm talking about being at the beach. Now last thing, and then we're going to be done, how many of you have had that challenge before where you're about to present, you're connecting to the laptop like I'm doing right now, and while you're connecting the projector to the laptop, everybody's seeing what you're doing. They see your first slide before you've even started. That's frustrating. I don't want them to see that. So here's a little tip for that. Just add a couple more slides at the top. And actually, on the first slide, make it blank. And actually, make your life even easier. Here's what, just copy that. And then you can paste that same slide a few times so that your slide is hidden. Just be aware, sometimes it's going to be like this. And you might need a couple more. And with all of them, except for the first one we'll leave as is. With all of the rest of them, we're just going to right-click and choose to hide it. Hide slide. Now when I pull up my projector, this is all they see. I go into slideshow view. I can present, there's nothing on the screen. As soon as I click the first time, I pull up my beach. So it seems like a lot to remember, right? Too many things, you're never going to be able to remember all that. But guess what? It's all in the book. Everything we just did is on page 52 and 53. Every single step we just did, you can go back and reference and how to do it. Because now is the time to do it. Any last questions, by the way, on anything we just did?
During the animation, is there any way that you can make it indefinitely?
Yes, actually you can. I'll show you right now. It can be distracting, just be prepared. So if I wanted, come on. You know, this, not every animation is going to be the same. So let me verify. Effect options, timing, repeat. I could repeat it 5 times or until the end of the slide.
Okay.
But just be aware that, you know, that might get distracting.
Yeah, I'm just thinking sometimes when you want to illustrate the network.
Absolutely. When I say that, just be aware. Just be aware. And Brett will definitely call you out on this if you do this. Just be aware that if you spend a minute and a half on that slide while that's happening, then that becomes distracting for your audience. They're watching that. They can't help but to not watch that. I would illustrate it and then have a black slide next so you could move off of that as you're talking. So here's what you're going to be doing. I do have another worksheet for you, only if you kind of wanted to make any other edits to your presentation. Again, the only reason I would recommend that is if you were given some feedback that you still needed to add more content or you still needed to refine your topics, they weren't clear, you know, then do a little bit of work. But obviously the main goal here for us today is to create a short PowerPoint presentation. Let's see, this is a 4-minute presentation.
2 slides.
Now, maybe, well, barely 3. 2 to 3 slides, maybe. Now that doesn't necessarily count your graph. You want to grab slide, title slide, but when you're getting into your meat, the meat of your presentation, you really should not have more than 2, 3 at most. When I start seeing people with 5 or 6 slides, I really start to question, like, ugh, there better be very little happening on each slide. So you're going to create a short PowerPoint presentation. Oh, it's plugged in. Oh, I didn't plug in this time. Not after I come back from your desk. There we go. Here's the other thing, is I tend to see a lot of people add new slides, new concepts, just because they now have slides. So they start changing their presentation because they have slides. Or, heaven forbid, they go and borrow slides. They add slides from other slide decks that has stuff on it that they weren't talking about before. Well, so now they're going to talk about it. That is not the goal of this. We don't want your story to change. We want you to create slides that help you tell your story. Help you. Not every single thing you say needs something on the slide. I will be able to tell, and I will call you out on it. I'm here to tell you right now, I will call you out on it, because I will be able to tell when you've borrowed somebody else's slide, when you've taken an existing slide and you're just using it as is. That's lazy, and I'm going to call you out on it. I want to see some creativity here. Once you've created your short slide deck, I think it's very valuable to practice. Brett has some practice rooms, and I don't know if he's shared all those practice rooms with you, but I will now. Especially Mac users, everybody, make sure that you can connect to the projector, it's looking good, and take 5 minutes, 10 minutes before the end time to practice it with your clicks, with your clicker. I will leave this in the room up here, so you can borrow mine. If you don't practice, it's going to show. You're actually getting a ton of time since we already had lunch. We're taking until 2:45. That is so much time, so much more time than you need. Is it 2:45? Yep. I was going to verify. I want to make sure I didn't make a mistake here. Thursday, we start at 2:15. No, wait, that's next Thursday.
Yeah, 2:40.
That's next Thursday.
2:45.
2:45, okay. So you have lots of time. But be really careful about becoming too diligent. Some people will spend way too much time on one concept, and then they leave themselves with 10 minutes to complete the rest of their slide deck. So watch your time management carefully to make sure that you have plenty of time to do a little practice, preferably. I highly recommend it. And here's your practice rooms. But you have a little over an hour and a half. That's a lot of time. It's more than most students get to create these slides. But be creative and have fun. And when we come back at 2:45, we're going to split into our 2 groups. You guys will then present your same presentation, but now you'll have slides. Any questions?
So, Cheyenne and I weren't here on Tuesday, so we didn't do
It's the same one we did on the first day.
on Monday.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, never mind.
How did you leverage corporate slide? I haven't at the time, we don't really have too much time to create slide from scratch.
Well, then you better create some time.
Yeah,
Because if you look at that corporate slide and you're like, God, I don't want to present that, then don't present it. Or fix it. What I find more often than not is the culprit is too much text. You can select text and delete it. It's always too much text on those
So
slides.
you're all right if we modify from the existing slide, not taking everything, but...
I would like you to really try doing this from scratch. I think you have the skills to do so. Think about your outline, go through your outline and say, how would I like to show this visually? I'm telling you right now, if you go with existing slides, it's not going to fit your story. You're going to be modifying your story for the slide. I don't want you to modify your story for a slide. I want you to create a slide to tell your story. There's a big difference. Any other questions?
You mentioned about you spend one whole day for one slide.
More than that, yes.
How you will see it?
You'll see it on Monday, and I'll point out which slide it is.
Okay.
All right, we'll see you guys at 2:45 in this room. Good luck.